Euranet Plus Panorama is a weekly review of European news broadcast by our network of EU radio stations.
Hi there, and welcome back to Euranet Plus Panorama, in which we cover the formal inauguration of the new European Parliament and the re-election of the presidents of the two main institutions. 54% of the MEPs in Strasbourg this week were taking their seats in the hemicycle for the first time. French member Muriel Laurent, a former mayor who sits in the Socialists and Democrats group, is one such newly elected representative. She tells EU Radio that one of her primary areas of focus will be defending human rights.
We can clearly see in the member states the difficulties we face in the rise of the far right, which is also evident in the European Parliament. I'm well aware of that. Nevertheless, I think that there are things that are easier to commit to at a European level and that must be passed on to member states in order to safeguard people.
5 of Slovenia's 9 MEPs are also new to the Parliament. One of these, new EPP member Matej Tonin, tells RTV Slovenia where his priorities lie.
I want to play an active part in the green transition, especially in a sensible green transition, as well as in modifying migration policy.
Meanwhile, returning MEP Irena Joveva from Renew Europe explains that she would like to see the Parliament ring the changes this term.
We need bolder, more ambitious action than we have seen so far. We need better communication, more honest dialogue, and I'm talking about citizens here. At the same time, we need to put an end to double standards and double morals in many areas.
It came as no great surprise when Malta's Roberta Metsola was re-elected President of the European Parliament for a second mandate on Tuesday. She received a resounding 562 votes to the 61 received by the only other candidate, Spain's Irene Montero of the Left group, who stood essentially symbolically. A second round of voting was not required. In her inaugural speech at the helm of a parliament that looks, at least on the surface, quite a bit more right-wing than the last one she led, Metsola, who hails from the EPP, called for a Europe for all and reminded us that we can never take democracy for granted. Following her re-election, President Metsola celebrated the fact that the centre has held, as Euranet Plus member station AMS reports.
I am quite optimistic that perhaps contrary to what was feared or what was felt or what was said over the past months during the election campaign and in the immediate weeks ensuing, is that that centre would not hold. But I think this week it will show that it does.
Metsola, only the second Parliament President in history to be re-elected, will pass the baton on to an as-yet unconfirmed successor at the halfway mark in 2027. The heads of the EPP, S&D, Renew Europe and the Greens EFA group have met informally over the past week to divvy up the other top jobs within the Parliament. The election of the Parliament's Bureau, made up of 14 vice-presidents and 5 quaestors, proved that these 4 groups can work together to get their own candidates in post, while keeping those from the 2 new far-right groups, Patriots for Europe and Europe of Sovereign Nations, out of the running. EPP member Eva Kopacz, for example, retained her vice-presidency after receiving the support of 572 MEPs, the second best result among all the VPs elected this week. Kopacz is the only Polish woman to hold such a high position in the Parliament, highlights Polski Radio, and she believes that her success reflects the strong position her civic platform delegation commands in the EPP.
We are the delegation that very often dictates the tone of the discussion in the EPP. We are the one that, in spite of everything, draws attention to our eastern border and to the situation in Ukraine. We are very often the driving force behind the way in which our fellow members approach certain matters.
In the second round of voting, the Conservative ECR group succeeded in having 2 of its representatives elected as VPs. Previously, Latvian member Roberts Zile was its only one, But he is now joined by Italy's Antonella Seberna from Giorgia Meloni's Brothers of Italy party. With Kosma Złotowski from Poland's Law and Justice elected Quaestor, it's clear that the so-called cordon sanitaire does not extend to the ECR group, as many in the EPP had wanted. For her part, Ursula von der Leyen had to work hard to secure the 361 votes she needed to captain the Commission's ship through another 5-year term. She ultimately walked away with 401 of the 720 votes on offer, though, which is significantly more than she got last time around. She was clearly relieved and elated.
I cannot begin without expressing how much I am grateful for the trust and the confidence of the majority of the European Parliament. 401 votes in favour. You recall last time it was 8 votes above the majority, necessary majority. This time it's 41, so much better. And this sends a strong message of confidence, and I think it's also recognition for the hard work that we carried out together in the last 5 years within the last mandate. We've spared no effort. We have navigated the most troubled waters that our union has ever faced, and we've kept the course on our long-term European goals.
Support from the EPP, the Socialists and Democrats, and the Liberal Renew Europe would in theory have been enough to take her over the line. Yet with votes being cast in secret, MEPs could choose not to toe the party line. And it must be said that not everyone was filled with enthusiasm over the prospect of another 5 years of VDL. In fact, not even all the delegations belonging to her own EPP group supported the current Commission chief's bid for another term. The Greens have spent the last month trying to convince the core S&D Renew EPP platform of their ability to provide the votes needed to re-elect the incumbent president, while laying down some conditions of their own. When her policy guidelines, essentially a proposed programme for the next 5 years, were eventually unveiled on Thursday morning, there really was something for everyone, it seemed. In a nod to her own centre-right European People's Party, she said she would launch some common defence projects, including a European air shield. She also appeared to address the concerns of right-wingers by promising to strengthen Europe's borders. There were also references to affordable housing, social rights, and the need to end the conflict in Gaza, all key words for attracting those on the left. Reaching out to Green MEPs, Ursula von der Leyen pledged to stick to climate targets, ultimately convincing them that she had their interests at heart and to back her in the vote. For Latvian MEP Mārtiņš Statis, this really was a no-brainer. Latvia's Radio shares his comments.
I personally
had the feeling that it was being read from the election programme of our Progressives Party. The fact that we need to make Europe more competitive, richer, by removing various restrictions on small businesses, and we need to create a single capital market. The fact that we need to create a single European air defence system, a single shield, and not deviate from any of the goals of the Green Deal, but finally start implementing and investing in them. I could go on, so of course I will support her, because it is quite simply a good thing for our region, because in her commission there will be both a Latvian representative and an Estonian one in high positions.
This
said, fellow Green member Terry Heintke from Germany stresses that there was more behind the Greens' backing of VDL than mere approval of her climate policy. Luxembourg's national broadcaster 100.7 reports.
If you ask me, is Ursula von der Leyen a Green candidate to be Commission President, or is this a Green program that she has provided us with the political guidelines? I can tell you no. We have negotiated hard. We have made compromise over these past weeks. And for me, what is crucial is that the majority that holds today is a majority of pro-European democratic groups in this House, because we need to keep the far right from getting into power, from having impact on the policy making in this European Union.
With her position less than certain, von der Leyen had even found herself in talks with the left and the ECR in an attempt to win over at least some of their members. The left categorically snubbed her in the final vote. And although her guidelines contained a pledge that a Commission VP would be given responsibility for slashing red tape, one of the ECR's key demands, most of this group's delegations ultimately used their free vote to vote against her too. Carlo Fidanza from Brothers of Italy tells our colleagues at Radio 24 why.
The
choices that have been made in recent days, the political platform, the search for a consensus on the left extended as far as the Greens, have made it impossible for us to support, to reconfirm her, because we believe that the strong message of change that came out of the ballot box on the 9th of June is not being respected. Naturally, this does not affect the relationship of institutional collaboration that exists between the Italian government and the re-elected President of the Commission, as much as we, of course, hope that it will lead, we are certain will lead in the coming weeks to the definition of that appropriate role for Italy in the next Commission.
The fact that she secured the critical votes she needed from the Greens instead of from the ECR ensures that the Commission President can play the continuity card, continuing to rely on the support of a broad pro-European platform, now made up of 4 groups, without being beholden to the ECR's Conservatives. So Carlo Fidanza is probably right that the highest echelons of both institutions are likely to look pretty similar to how they looked in the last parliamentary term, despite a relatively major shift in voter preferences. When asked by a journalist what her message to citizens would be, VDL did not hold back.
We are working all together for a strong Europe. We're working on the topics of prosperity and competitiveness in our economy, social fairness because we have a social market economy. We're working on protecting people, so security and defense, but the most important is the overarching topic of strengthening our democracy. Our democracy is under attack from inside and from outside, and therefore it is crucial that the democratic forces stand together to defend our democracy.
The next step for the newly confirmed Commission Chief is to appoint her team of commissioners. This is set to include new portfolios for defence, the Mediterranean, intergenerational fairness, and, perhaps surprisingly, housing. She has invited member states to each put forward 1 male and 1 female candidate, and is due to begin the selection process in around a month's time. Let's find out how this all plays out when we return after the summer recess. We'll be back here on the 30th of August, so do join us then.